In the modern world, we've all got an endless list of stuff that we could be doing. The more we get done, the more we have to do. If we want to make time for the most important stuff, the stuff that actually matters, we can't just do it by spinning our gears faster and faster. Instead, we need a more holistic approach to our daily routines, priorities, and lives. Hey friends, welcome back to the channel and to the third episode of Book Club, the series where I summarize the key insights and ideas from some of my favorite books. And today, we're talking about Make Time by Jake Knapp and John Zeratsky, How to Focus on What Matters Every Day. Jake and John both used to work at Google. They've spent their careers designing products like Gmail, YouTube, and Google Hangouts. So they've got a unique insight into why these services are so compelling and how to prevent them from taking over our lives. Make Time is a sort of productivity book, but it presents this four-part framework for how we can focus on the things that matter most to us. And on top of that, between these four bits of the framework, we've got 87 different tactics in the book. And kind of one of the main premises is that it's not a very kind of prescriptive productivity book. It's more a case of recognizing that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to productivity. And so the point is that you have a look through, you understand the framework, and then you sort of pick and choose the tactics that work for you. But before we get to the framework and the tactics, let's start with an important question, and that is, why is life so busy? So there's two main things that contribute to this, but the main ones are the busy bandwagon and infinity pools. The busy bandwagon is the idea that being busy is somehow a badge of honor. We all, and I'm definitely guilty of this as well, we try and squeeze productivity into every minute of the day. And at least for me, even if I'm taking a break, I feel a little bit guilty that I'm not doing something, quote, useful with that time. In a way, it's this constant fear that if I slow down, I'm gonna fall behind. And even when we have so much to be grateful for, like at least for me, there is still this fear that it's all gonna come crashing down unless I keep going at 100 miles per hour. Then we've got infinity pools.
So infinity pools are the apps and services, websites, whatever, anything in our life that has sort of an infinite supply of content that is always refreshing. There's always more water in the pool. You can jump back in at any time. We actually call it kryptonite, distraction kryptonite in the book. You know, we had this thing that just as kryptonite renders Superman powerless, this whatever app it is or whatever service it is, it sort of makes us powerless to resist.
The busy bandwagon defaults to endless tasks. The infinity pools default to endless distraction. Okay, so we've identified the problems, the busy bandwagon and the infinity pools, but the issue is that without a proper framework for dealing with these, we tend to rely on willpower. Our
kind of philosophy with that stuff is that because those become habitual actions, they're not things where you're actively deciding to go and spend time on that service or that app, but you're doing it out of habit, that you can't rely on willpower to counteract that force. And there's actually a ton of research on this, so this is not an original observation, but it's habits versus willpower, like the habits are gonna win.
So what we need is a system that we can build our productive habits around, and that is where the four-part framework comes in. Make Time is based on a simple structure of 4 steps repeated every day: highlight, laser, energize, and reflect.
When we started to write about this stuff, we wanted it to be not a single recipe, step 1, step 2, step 3, but more like a cookbook. And so we wanted to have a lot of different recipes that you could use depending on what worked for you, what clicked for you. Imagine you get a cookbook and there's a bunch of different stuff, and nobody gets a cookbook and they're like, all right, page 1, first recipe, time to make it. Nobody does that. You kind of flip through, you find the things that look good to you. And so that's the way the book is structured. And then we kind of put this framework around it. And we said, we don't care which tactics you use. We don't care if you use the tactics that are in the book or other stuff. But we think that if you kind of think about those tactics, those specific things that you're doing, think if those follow or kind of fit into this 4-step framework, you're going to be successful.
The first step is deciding what we want to actually make time for, and that involves figuring out what is our daily highlight. The highlight hypothesis is that if you set a single intention at the start of each day, we predict you'll be more satisfied, joyful, and effective. The idea of the daily highlight is that each day we'll choose a single activity that we'll prioritize and protect in our calendar. The highlight can kind of be anything. It can be finishing off a piece of work, or doing a workout, or even just going for a walk. It's not the only thing that we're going to be doing, but it's the thing that we want to definitely make time for that day. As Jake and John say in the book, focusing on a daily highlight stops the tug of war between infinity pool distractions and the demands of the busy bandwagon. It reveals a third path: being intentional and focused about how you spend your time. Since reading this book a few months ago, every single day I now set for myself a daily highlight, and that's the thing that I have to get done. And even though I've got a load of other things on my to-do list, I just always make sure that that is the one thing that I do. The next step is, how do we pick our highlight each day? And it can literally be whatever you want, but John and Jake say that if you're struggling to pick a daily highlight, you can think of it in one of 3 ways: urgency, satisfaction, and joy. The point is, as long as we set a focus for the day that allows us to kind of make time for it. And in the book, they've got 7 different tactics for how to figure out what our daily highlight is. And then they've got a load of different methods for actually making the time for that highlight. The one that I use is that each morning, whether I'm doing my daily check-in on Notion or if I'm writing it down on a piece of paper, I will just write a little H, and that will be my highlight of the day. And then when I'm planning my day out, in my head, I'll kind of plan out, okay, I want to do my daily highlight between 2 and 4 p.m. today. So now that we've picked our daily highlight, step number 2 in the 4-part framework is laser. And the laser hypothesis is that if you create barriers around the busy bandwagon and infinity pools, we predict that you'll focus your attention like a laser beam.
And this is all about defense. So if the first step is offense, what do I want to make time for? Laser is defense. So it's how do I manage my attention? How do I avoid getting sucked into all the other stuff that's going on in the world so that I can stay focused on that thing that matters? And this is where our background as tech designers really, I think, comes in handy, because we can share sort of this behind the scenes approach of like, okay, this is why this stuff is distracting. Our philosophy there is to really kind of understand those mechanisms so that you can cut them off. You can like break those habit loops so that you don't have to like, clench your fists and like use willpower to like resist checking stuff. It's just not there for you.
And here's another nice quote from the book. They say that when distraction is hard to access, you don't have to worry about willpower. You can channel your energy into making time instead of wasting it. So the point is, because we know we're going to get distracted by our devices, the instant gratification of these infinity pools, we need to ramp up the friction so that it physically makes it harder to use the things. The book actually has 44 different tactics that we can pick and choose from to manage all of the various distractions in our lives and to really laser down. Obviously, that's way too many for a YouTube video, but there were a few that were new to me when I read it a few months ago and that I've actually started using in my life. So we've got 23, skip the morning check-in, 30, watch out for time craters, 32, turn distractions into tools, 39, reset expectations, 50, explode your highlight, and 60, go all in. If you want to find out more about those, then firstly, grab a copy of the book. It's a very good book. But secondly, John and I discussed quite a lot of these in depth during our like 2-hour long conversation. If you want to check it out, the whole 2-hour uncut interview is available on Nebula. And what we started doing recently as well is that with all of the deep dives that I'm doing, we're kind of cutting them up into bite-sized chunks for a new bite-sized series on Nebula. If for some reason you haven't heard, Nebula is an independent streaming platform that me and a bunch of other creative friends are helping to build. It's not like a competitor to YouTube, but it's a place where we can put random content like a 2-hour interview or like, 10 bits of bite size or kind of really niche videos where I talk about my productivity workflows. To get access to Nebula, the best way is to sign up to CuriosityStream, who are very kindly sponsoring this video. CuriosityStream is the world's leading documentary streaming platform with thousands of documentaries covering health, finance, nature, history, geography, basically anything you can think of. And the best news is that if you sign up to CuriosityStream, which is $3 a month or $20 a year, you get free access to Nebula. So you get access to all of my deep dive series, the uncut interviews, also everything in the bite-size series, which are the bite-size versions. You also get access to my workflow series, which at the moment has 15 videos where I deep dive into some of my favorite productivity apps. So if that sounds good and you want access to thousands of documentaries, along with my exclusive content, along with exclusive content from people like Tom Scott, Thomas Frank, Wendover Productions, and Legal Eagle, then head over to curiositystream.com/Ali and use the coupon code Ali at checkout. That will give you an email that gives you your Nebula login details, and this is literally the single best deal in streaming. Anyway, going back to the book, the third part of the process is Energise. And the Energise hypothesis is that if you live a little more like a prehistoric human, we predict you'll enhance your mental and physical energy.
The third step is a bit different, and it's about energy. And so it's kind of based on the idea that like when we're reading about or thinking about, how we're spending our time, what we're focused on, we tend to focus on our brains. It's all about the decisions that we're making and those types of things. But we've all kind of experienced this struggle that if your body's not well, your brain doesn't work. You don't get enough sleep, you drank too much, whatever it might be, like that feeling is there, but our culture does not encourage us to think about our bodies and brains as being one system. So that's why step 3, Energize, is there, and it's all about really simple ways that you can take care of yourself so that you have energy for that stuff that you really care about.
Like, this stuff is really important, and I know I don't pay as much attention to it as I should. Like, for me, I love discovering a new productivity app that will change my workflow and make a video about it and all this stuff. But actually, if I just focused on sleeping on time, eating well, and drinking lots of water and exercising, that would probably do more to boost my productivity than discovering Rome Research or Notion or whatever fancy new app is popular this week. And I've actually learned quite a few things about food, sleep, exercise, and caffeine from reading Make Time. Tactic 70 in the list, for example, is pretty cool. Before reading that, I'd wake up in the morning and the first thing I'd do would be to drink a cup of coffee to kind of wake myself up. But what they say here is that our body's like natural cortisol wakes us up about an hour after we first wake up. And so we should then let the caffeine kick in at that point because that keeps us awake for longer. And it also means we're not interfering with our own body's cortisol mechanisms. And tactic 84, for example, is fake the sunset. And that's this idea that our bodies are designed to go to sleep when we see the sun setting, so when all the light gets warm. But the problem is that with all our devices and stuff, we've got this like blue light glaring at us at all times. And so after reading that, what I started to do is I switched the Philips Hue light bulbs in the whole house to a very sort of warm glow. And I've got these like blue light blocking glasses that I add to my actual glasses a few hours before bed. And that makes everything go yellow, which means I'm kind of blocking the blue light. And in theory, that should increase the quality of my sleep or something like that, as ridiculous as they look. And finally, all three of these steps would be kind of pointless if we didn't then reflect on what we're doing to see if it actually makes a difference to our day.
Fourth step might actually be the most important because it's one that I think is oftentimes missing, and it's reflect. And it's all about kind of looking back every day and taking notes on what worked for you. And so this is where kind of this do-it-yourself sort of adjust and adapt part of the philosophy comes in. This is kind of the mechanism for going through all those 87 recipes and finding the ones that worked, is this idea of this daily reflection.
So step 4 is all about reflecting on our day. And at the end of the book, they've got this sample template that we can use to base our own daily reflection off of. And so my daily reflection that I do at the end of each day on Notion, I've built a Notion template using input from Make Time and also from my friend Valentine, who I did a deep dive with, more on Nebula about that if you want to check it out. And also from a fantastic book called Storyworthy by Matthew Dix that I'm going to do a book club episode on at some point in the future. So at the end of our deep dive interview, I asked John if he had any parting advice for the people watching.
The most important thing that I want people to take away from this interview and from all the work that I do is that you need to find a way to establish your own system. You need to kind of get in the routine and the habit of experimenting and trying things and sort of believe that your time and your attention and your energy are yours to design and to experiment with. And you need to do that because you can't just do what somebody else says to do. You can't just read a book and follow the steps and your life will be perfect. You've got to kind of take ownership of that. Make your time your own, experiment with it and figure out what works for you.
This whole productivity stuff isn't about reading a book or watching a video and then that's it. We should all be in control of our own time. And if we're not, then we need to understand a framework, experiment with different techniques, and ultimately make time our own. Thank you for watching.